Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Well, good morning, everyone, and I guess congratulations are in order for an amazing win at the Army-Navy game. Congratulations, everyone. Mr. Secretary of the Navy, Honorable Carlos del Toro, President of the Naval War College, Rear Admiral Walker, dear Provost, Dr. Mariano, dear Dr. Yamin, faculty, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, representatives from the State Department, from the United Nations and countries around the world. I am truly honored to be with you here today as we close out this year, taking a moment to reflect on a topic that is deeply personal to me and to all the people of Kosovo, and profoundly essential to the pursuit of peace and security across the globe. The Women, Peace and Security Agenda is more than just a set of priorities. It is a proven framework, a pathway with power to drive transformative change in our societies. It is not a singular effort, but a collective call to action, one that can redefine the foundations of peace, equality, and stability worldwide. But before I delve any further into this, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude for this invitation. I accepted it with a deep sense of responsibility, not just to the people of Kosovo, who carry a lifetime of gratitude to the United States of America, but especially for the brave men and women in uniform of the United States of America who have helped turn the dream of a free, independent, and sovereign Kosovo into reality. For us in the Republic of Kosovo, the service and sacrifice of American forces, the unwavering commitment to freedom, democracy, and peace have inspired generations. The strategic role that you've played and continue to play in peacekeeping operations across the world are a testament to how shared values translate into shared action. They are a reminder that partnerships are built not just through agreements, but through trust, respect, and service. So I say this with certainty. No other people possess the respect, the support, and love that the people of Kosovo have for the United States of America. We proudly say that we're the most pro-American nation on earth, and will remain so. And obviously, we have plenty of reasons to be the most pro-American nation, because we stand here today, of course, because of the long sacrifice and the liberation struggle of our people, but at the same time, because you stood with us during our most critical moments, during times when our very survival was on the line. The most genuine testament to this legacy today are the words of American soldiers shared with me this April during my visit to Texas, related to a development that followed an act of aggression by Serbia in Kosovo this past year. He said, and I quote, "Madam President, we were ready to put our lives on the line to defend the sovereign and free Republic of Kosovo. For this and for everything you've done throughout these 2.5 past decades, we will always remain grateful." Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, for Kosovo, the message of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda resonates deeply. We know the pain of war and the sacrifices that we've made for peace. Our journey has been about striving for a society where women's voices are heard and valued, but most importantly, where their stories are shared with the world. Our pain from the past and our ambitions for the future have made us everyday fighters for the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. This agenda connects us across borders, unite us in shared beliefs that empowered women empower societies. You will often hear us say that the women of Kosovo embody the very spirit of the WPS agenda through their resilience, courage, and vision. My presence here today is an expression of our gratitude and respect for all these women that came before us. for the trailblazers who came before us, for the incredible women I have had the privilege of working with every day, and for the young generation of women stepping boldly into opportunities and challenges with integrity, grace, and strength. For too long, traditional security models focus solely on the military power and economic strength while neglecting social stability, human security, and the contribution of marginalized groups. But we now have the evidence, and that evidence speaks loud and clear. Empowering women, both in peacekeeping and decision-making processes, strengthens entire societies in unimaginable ways, turning them into more sustainable societies, more inclusive, and ultimately more successful ones. So the WPS agenda is deeply personal to all of us because it matters to our people, to our country, and to the women and girls in Kosovo. But it is not just about Kosovo. It is a vision that stretches beyond our borders, a vision intertwined with the unwavering pursuit of equality and peace. So next time when someone asks you, why does the WPS agenda matter? You tell them, because the impact of wars and conflicts on men and women are disproportionate, as we've heard this morning. It is now absolutely evident that wars and conflicts do not impact everyone equally. While both men and women suffer during times of war, and I can surely confirm this firsthand from our personal experience, women are often targeted in ways that underscore the most entrenched inequalities of our societies. Sexual violence in war is the strongest testimony to this. In Kosovo, we have more than 20,000 women, and among them some men as well, who have been the target of this most heinous war crime committed by the Milosevic regime. In a matter of months during the war in Kosovo, 20,000 women were raped because they wanted to scar an entire nation. Violence against women during conflicts is more than just a personal strategy. It's a societal one, and they want to cause intergenerational harm. It is therefore particularly important to be reminded that when women are marginalized, when their voices are silenced and their needs ignored, we all suffer. We all suffer, men and women alike. A nation's ability to recover, to rebuild, and to heal is directly tied to how well it supports its women. Therefore, when receiving the question, why the WPS agenda, please also make sure to tell everyone that this agenda is so much more than just recognizing women as victims. In fact, it's about acknowledging them as powerful agents of change, powerful agents of positive change, as they've always been. History shows us time and time again that peace is not just facilitated by the inclusion of women, but it's strengthened by it, and it becomes more long-lasting. So take Kosovo as an example. From our darkest days to our transition towards peace, from our post-war recovery to state building, women have been at the forefront of all of it, fighting for our country, defending our country, and then building our peace and building our state. They've led the peaceful resistance, they've led the armed resistance, they've worked tirelessly to build communities and shaped post-war recovery efforts. Across Kosovo and across the world, women-led initiatives prove time and time again to be more sustainable, more inclusive, and more successful in peace building. But this is not just a moral choice. It's a strategic one. When women are included in peace processes, security reform, and decision-making, we are building stronger and more resilient societies. And ultimately, when answering why the WPS agenda question, please remind everyone that unfortunately, in too many societies, social and cultural norms have historically excluded women from the formal decision-making processes and security leadership. These norms have limited women's participation and voices for far too long. And when we break down these barriers, as many of us have, when women take their rightful place at decision-making tables, whether in politics, in peace negotiations, or security organizations, we do far more than empowering those individuals. We empower entire nations. This is why the WPS agenda is important. It's why it matters and why it carries a transformative potential. So, ladies and gentlemen, as all of you know, service is not just about defending borders. It's about responding to crisis. It's about building alliances and contributing to peace and stability, whatever duty calls, and living up to the task in line with the needs of our societies. The Women, Peace and Security Agenda is one of those noble tasks of our time. The United States has historically upheld a legacy of global leadership, ranging from institution building to the steadfast defense of democracy, freedom, and security. And I am proud of the support we have received historically, but also the guidance we've received as we transform our security forces into a fully capable and modern military that serves shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. men and women in uniform in peacekeeping missions around the world. Equally as much, I am proud of the support we are receiving as we gradually claim a global leadership position in the advancement of WPS agenda. With the assistance of our partners and allies, particularly through the examples of leadership of institutions such as the U.S. Naval War College, we have the opportunity to define a future anchored in purpose, integrity, and shared resolve. As you step into your roles as future Navy officers, policymakers, of course, also secretaries of Navy, or whatever capacity you might serve, remember that every decision you make holds the power to shape not just the course of your careers, but the very future of our world. Make those decisions with the unwavering commitment to nurturing partnerships founded on shared values, for it is through the examples that we set that we truly rise. Stand firm on the right side of history, guided by a moral compass that always points towards justice, honor, and integrity. And above all, never forget the vital contributions of women, both in uniform and in every corner of our societies. Their voices, their leadership and strength are essential to the progress and unity we seek. Your choices will define the world of tomorrow. Lead with courage, wisdom, and an unyielding sense of duty. And never forget, the most important and noble legacy a person can leave behind is the legacy of peace and security. Thank you for your service, for your leadership, and for standing with us through challenges and triumphs. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless the Republic of Kosovo. May God bless the Navy. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. We appreciate the time and the remarks. Based on time, I just want to jump right into it. I'm Stephen Marion. I'm the provost here at the War College. Mr. Secretary, thanks again for coming up and kicking this off. Admiral Walker, thanks for the opportunity. To all our distinguished visitors, particularly we have several ambassadors and admirals and senior officers in the room. Welcome. And students, welcome to this. 3 iterations ago, we decided to make the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda and Symposium part of your curriculum here. And I think it's an excellent decision. And I think so far we're demonstrating why that's the case when we have such an opportunity. Excellency, as was mentioned, this symposium is part of our Perspectives on Modern War course. And the theme that we talked about and introduced for this trimester has to do with leadership and ethics and culture. The first question I wanted to ask before we get it going to the audience has to do with that. And you concluded there your remarks with some hints of it. I think the question is, could you talk a little bit about maybe some of the ethical challenges and cultural challenges that you've had as the president of Kosovo in your unique situation.
Well, once again, thank you for the opportunity. And I think what is essential to point out is that when you grow up as a child of 4, which I have, and of course everyone else in my delegation and everyone that you will meet in Kosovo that is older than 25 years, it shapes you for your entire life. It shapes you as a human being, it shapes you as a politician, and it shapes the very alliances that you build globally. Because only 25 years ago, and for us it's very fresh memories, we were refugees, we were internally displaced, many of us, and we were waiting for the world to come to our rescue. And as I said earlier, the United States did not turn a blind eye to our suffering. And we've had thousands and thousands of Navy officers, thousands of members of the Army that have served in Kosovo and turned it, I believe, in one of the biggest success stories of American foreign and defense policy in recent history. Today, Kosovo stands as a beacon of hope and democracy in the region, a champion of rule of law. And of course, from being an importer of security, now we've become an exporter of security with members of our army serving through bilateral agreements that we have with the US, serving alongside US women and men in uniform in peacekeeping missions around the world. So, of course, throughout this path, there are a number of challenges that we face. I would say the first and foremost is the fact that we have a neighbor that constantly challenges our security. And when you have a neighbor that doesn't believe in the principles of democracy, human rights, rule of law, and doesn't respect its other neighbors, but considers them as temporary states and denies their very existence, of course, the challenges are immense. But in these challenges, what we've learned is that precisely in the darkest moments, precisely in the hardest moments, what you stand for and who stands with you is what truly matters. Kosovo has proven to stand for the very values that we have fought together with the United States of America. And secondly, it was shown time and time again that the United States stands with the people of Kosovo when we face these challenges. I wouldn't say that I have faced ethical challenges in my work. In fact, when we talk about the moral compass, again, because we grew up in an apartheid-like system where every single basic human rights of ours was violated. We were not allowed to go to school. Our parents were not allowed to go to work. We were not allowed, let's say, to play basketball or football. We were not allowed to exercise our cultural rights. And we were 92% of the people of Kosovo of our ethnicity, but we were run by, of course, a dictatorship, a regime, the Milosevic regime, the butcher of the Balkans, who wanted to deny the existence of everyone else that did not belong to his nationality. And because we grew up like that, for us, the moral compass has always been very clear. Standing on the right side of history has never been a gray zone. So let's say when Russia invaded Ukraine, for us, there's no ifs or buts there. There's no gray zone there. You stand with Ukraine. You stand with the nation that is defending its sovereignty. You stand with a nation that is defending its sovereignty, that it's defending its right to exist, it's defending its freedom, it's defending its territorial integrity from a lunatic that is trying to bring the entire world into flames. And in these kind of situations, obviously for us, there's no space to sit in 2 chairs at once, and we don't even try. We don't flirt with malign forces. Kosovo right now has a 97% approval rate of US leadership in the world, in the sense that we've seen that, you know, in the entire existence of our region, there's been war after war after war after war until the United States stepped in. In the 90s, the US made sure that we had, as a region, as the Western Balkans, we had the attention of the world. And finally, after centuries of conflict after conflict, Our kids are the very first generation that have not known war. The very first generation ever in the history of the existence of our nation that are living in peace. So our grandparents, our parents, we had to go through a genocidal war. And finally, our children are living in peace. And this is because of the leadership role that the United States has lived. So if someone ever asks, why are we serving around the world? Well, peace and security in Europe matters to the national security of the United States. Because as we have seen throughout history, there can never be a peaceful United States if there is war in Europe. So in these kind of situations, for Kosovo, there's never a gray zone. There are never, ethical questions on where we should stand. We stand with the oppressed. We stand with those that are fighting for their freedom. And we join the United States in these battles around the world. And I know we are a small country. Obviously, we do not have the economic might or the military might that the United States has. But I think the power of a nation should not be determined by its size alone, but also by the story it has to tell. And Kosovo has an amazing story to tell of how when nations, when democracies stand together, they can achieve freedom. It's exactly an embodiment of that, what we see in Kosovo today.
Thank you, ma'am. Another theme of the course throughout the study here this year is really that of this era of strategic competition or great power competition. You just mentioned, a small country like Kosovo, you have some very specific stands, but how do you see this great power competition? Maybe with Russia, it's a little clearer, but how about with China? We spend a lot of time in the curriculum here talking about China's rise and so forth. How do you see that playing out in Kosovo or maybe in the Balkans or Europe generally?
I think strategic competition needs to go beyond the numbers and beyond economic interests. And again, if we just look at recent history, we learn a very basic principle. Trade does not equal trust. Otherwise, there would have never been a war between Russia and Ukraine. They were, I believe, each other's number one trading partners. But obviously, when you have a country like Russia, in this case, that does not care for basic principles of international law, that wants to wipe out other nations in its neighborhood from the map of the earth, that wants to indiscriminately kill people, including using rape as a tool of war, that wants to deny the existence of other countries that are independent and sovereign and within their right to be so. In these kind of cases, you can't just think about economics because Europe tried that. As we know, for many years, many European countries thought that building economic relations with Putin and appeasing him through an active appeasement policy might make him softer. But again, history taught us that appeasement of dictators, appeasement of autocrats never, ever leads to long-lasting peace. And the military knows that best. I think generals from the US Army kept saying that all the time. Don't appease the dictator because it only emboldens them to use more violence. It encourages them to become more aggressive against their neighbors. So keeping that in mind is crucial in this strategic competition. So while, of course, we work with the United States, with the European Union, with partners in other continents, because there are partners, let's say, like Japan in the Asian continent, like Australia and New Zealand, and many other nations in Latin America and in Africa who, are partners of the United States. We need to keep in mind that beyond economic interests, strategic partnership will work only if it's also based on shared values. So they have to come hand in hand. Of course, the economic interest, but also the values that we share on the other side. Because we've learned just in the past few years, trying to work with a guy like Putin based on economic interest only led to war. They've tried in the European Union buying gas, buying energy from Russia. What did that lead to? Invasion after invasion. They crippled Moldova, they crippled Georgia, they crippled Ukraine by taking away territory in 2014. Yet again, countries were buying energy from Russia, strengthening it economically. And what do they do with that money? They kill people. they kill people, they buy more weapons. It's the same in our region. The more appeasement towards the president of Serbia, who is the best friend of Russia, China, and Iran as we speak, and the only country in Europe to purchase weapons and also sell them weapons from these three malign actors, the more it has encouraged the leadership of Serbia to use violence against its neighbors, whether it's against Kosovo, against Bosnia and Herzegovina, and try to destabilize everyone else in the region. So yes, strategic competition should, of course, focus a lot on economic might and so on, but we should never forget who we deal with. It's important to understand that our partners should also believe in values of democracy, rule of law, and human rights. Because if we lose that, then where do we differ from these dictators? So I think it's so crucial that we hold strong to these values while we work on these strategic interest partnerships.
Thank you, President Osmani. Well, we've got about 15 minutes or so for questions. So I just want to remind everyone, particularly our guests that are new to our lovely auditorium here, you've got a microphone in front of you on the seat, and we would just ask you, if recognized, to ask the question. Please make it a question and make it as succinct as possible, but to introduce yourself and whether you're a member of the course or one of our visitors and what organizations you're from. And I'll do my best to try and scan the full auditorium here. So let's go with the first question. I see the first hand over here. Thank you, ma'am. Could you use the microphone that's in the seat in front of you? And there's a little button on it. And then also, I should let you know, there's a couple hundred people online joining us today. So all of you that are out there watching and listening, part of this using the microphone is for them to make sure that they can hear and observe. So please, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my question. Madam President, I was in Kosovo. I served from August 23 to February 24. I was with A432. Part of the Rhode Island Army National Guard helicopter unit that went down. I'm a retired first sergeant. More of a statement. I just want to say probably one of the most worthwhile, for sure, deployments I've ever been on. I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to finish over 28 years military service in Kosovo. So I definitely say to you, it is a grateful nation. I've never felt more love going over there. And I actually had the opportunity to teach transitional English with the Kosovo military forces. So it was quite the opportunity. And I'm just so thankful to have actually had the opportunity to listen to you speak, and would love for you to sign my my plaque, if you could, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your service. It means so much to the people of Kosovo. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but another question here. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam President. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Caitlin Diffley. I'm here representing NATO Combined Space Force Component Command. And I'm interested in hearing, as you've spoken about Kosovo moving from a war-torn country to being an exporter of security, which is such a huge achievement, how is WPS an opportunity for some of our minority communities, whether it's a smaller domain like space or a smaller nation like some of our NATO partners, to have an outsized impact on the global war, especially considering great power competition?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Thank you. I think what the case of Kosovo shows, whether we're talking about the times of war or the times of peace, is that women can really give an enormous contribution in achieving long-lasting peace. We've had women leading negotiations for the final status of Kosovo. We've had women leading the dialogue with Serbia. And because of not just the professionalism, but the impact that they've had, their leadership has had, we've achieved long-lasting, peaceful solutions on so many fronts, despite of the challenges that we face today. And every single time, our recent history shows that women were included at the table when these decisions were made. It has had a positive impact in achieving resolutions more quicker, and to have them more long-lasting and sustainable. And I think this is a model that we're trying to portray and share with the world. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is, I mentioned the survivors of sexual violence. Kosovo has built the strongest support system that the world knows right now for survivors post-war. And I've appointed the presidential special envoy, who was a survivor herself, and also on survivors of sexual violence, but also another presidential special envoy on transitional justice. They are both survivors of sexual violence, but they've managed to become survivors who thrive. They've been raising their voice, they've been fighting for justice, and they're also traveling around the world. They've been to many nations in Africa, they've been to Ukraine, they've been to the Middle East to make sure that they empower survivors of sexual violence so that they can speak up and make sure that they can build these instruments of support within the country, even while there's still a war going on. So I think, although we're a small country, we're managing to share this good example with the rest of the world of, our survivors call it turning pain into strength. So of course, there's deep pain. There are deep wounds in our society still, because there hasn't been justice for all of the crimes that have been committed. Nevertheless, being able to turn that into strength and encouragement for others around the world takes quite a lot of resilience. So through that, through the Women, Peace and Security agenda, we've managed to become a positive example around the world, but most importantly, to help others in need when they need a helping hand. So when the US withdrew from Afghanistan, Kosovo was the very first country in the world to welcome Afghan evacuees. So we've had thousands coming in through a bilateral agreement that we have with the US, and then thousands coming in with a bilateral agreement that we had with NATO. And we did that first and foremost because we want to give back. We welcome the opportunity to give back, but at the same time, because we know what it means to be kicked out of your home and to not be able to ensure your freedom and human rights within your country. And we wanted to help the people of Afghanistan, especially women who are undergoing a gender apartheid as we speak, because we know what it means to be a refugee and to be away from your home. So making sure that they feel safe was, of course, a priority for us, and working with our partners around the world to now give back and to make sure that we help others to live in peace, to live safely, was the contribution that we made despite being a small country. So I think as a small country, you can still really give a great contribution. Sometimes the smallest programs actually have the biggest impact. It's not about the money, it's not about the numbers, but it's about the example that you set. And I believe, especially through the Women, Peace and Security agenda, we've been managing to set such an example.
It's interesting, Excellency, recently...
Yes.
Oh, yes, Secretary.
But I want to thank all of you again for participating in this amazing conference. There are not enough ways to thank you again, Madam President, for being here with you in our commitment, and we will continue to work with you on WPS and all the important things.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Mr. Secretary.
So ma'am, recently Radmila Sekerinska was announced as the new NATO Deputy Secretary General, former Defense Minister from North Macedonia. What does some appointment like that mean to you, or mean to the Balkans generally? Is that an important decision?
I believe so. We've worked closely with Radmila throughout the years on the Women, Peace and Security agenda, and notably on the Women, Peace and Security International Forum, which takes place in Kosovo every year. She's been a strong supporter. We managed to bring the entire world to Kosovo, with countries all the way to the Pacific participating and discussing how strengthening and empowering women actually empowers peace and security globally. So I think her role will absolutely be beneficial for this agenda, but generally will increase the understanding within NATO of the strategic importance of the Western Balkans into NATO. For us to be in NATO means to be safe. It is extremely important that the remaining countries in the Western Balkans, those who want to, also join NATO in order to make sure that we increase the level of peace and security in our part of Europe. And this, in turn, will increase peace and security in the entire continent of Europe and then, in turn, into the United States. So we will work closely with her and, of course, everyone else in NATO to make sure that this message is sent across.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Madam President, Lieutenant Commander Ahmed Murad from Egypt, doing the Naval Staff College in the Naval War College, class 2025. Thank you for the opportunity. From Kosovo president perspective, how would you mitigate the challenges in Kosovo and also how to contribute outside of Kosovo for all the world, for women, healthcare, and education as the two big problems that would be in Kosovo and all the world? Thank you.
Thank you. I think you pointed out to an important issue which we were discussing with the Secretary of the Navy last evening, how to make sure that while on one hand we invest in national security, in our defense, in global peace and security, at the other hand we also invest in the well-being of our citizens, because well-being has to go hand in hand with national security. Otherwise, if you just forget about education, if you forget about quality healthcare, if you forget about making sure, let's say, the members of the Navy and the members of the Army also feel well respected and not just have a good, weapon to use, then we're going to fail. So what is going on in Kosovo right now is that we're working on both aspects. This past 4 years of our mandate, we've quadrupled investment in our army in terms of buying more defense weapons, because after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we see that there's a constant interest to have a spillover effect in the Western Balkans. So we have to be able to defend ourselves. But behind that weapon, you need an army officer or a Navy officer that has a strong motive. And that, in that sense, we need to make sure that both men and women have that strong motive, and that is achieved when you also invest in their well-being, in their care, in making sure that their families are also happy. Because, I'm a military spouse also. My husband has served. He's now a reserve member of the Army. But it's a sacrifice that families make as well. In this case, it's a double sacrifice for the women, because in so many instances, they have to stay away from their children. And as a mother of twins, I can only testify to how difficult it is when I have to travel around the world and be away from my children. So making sure that this support for the well-being of military members, women and men, the well-being of families, so that they can have that full motive when they defend their countries, should be, I think, a priority, not just for Kosovo, but for countries around the world. And again, when it comes to our contribution worldwide, we're serving alongside the US military and the UK military in different peacekeeping missions around the world. And in all of these missions, I'm proud to say that the members of our military are proven to be fantastic, and they are really, really shining in these missions. And because we have known war, and our generation has known war, I think we have this increased capability to talk to everyone in societies around the world, and to just help them go from tensions to peace building, to resilient societies despite of the pains of the past, societies that continue to fight for justice, but at the same time understand the importance of reconciliation. So these are the things where we, I believe, are in a better shape to give a strong contribution everywhere in the world. Of course, would love to work with Egypt to see how we can jointly contribute to peacekeeping missions around the world. Egypt is a country with which we go back in history, because our nation, as you rightly know, has contributed to the establishment of modern Egypt as well. And I believe beyond the historical ties, it's because of the values that we share that we can jointly contribute to building peace and security anywhere in the world. Because of our history, because of our experience, our contribution, I think, is quite unique.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Let's just go all the way. Let's go in the back there.
Yeah.
Good morning, Lieutenant Commander Satterwhite. My question and concerns as generations grow more distant from the conflicts of war. If you're able to gather that interest today in women, peace, and security and grow it, how do you contain that interest in newer generations as the effects that their grandparents felt and their great-grandparents stops being part of their culture at growing up? For example, with the United States not having a bordering nation that is like yours with Serbia.
That's a very good question. You know, oftentimes we struggle with how do we keep the younger generation interested, and not just on the women, peace, and security agenda, but on wider issues of peace and security. Because now, you know, the young generations, they haven't gone through war, and it's more difficult for them to understand our position, where we never take anything for granted. We don't take our freedom for granted. We don't take the right to live for granted. We don't take the right to go to school for granted. So I think it takes constant conversations and a lot of efforts to show them that, you know, peace and security is very, very fragile. It's very fragile for every one of us. And I visited the museum in Halifax, Canada recently, and it says it's the place where most refugees would go first, whether from Europe, during the Second World War, and it's the place where refugees from Kosovo landed in 1999. So they have a refugees museum with the stories of people that came to safety in Canada. And it says, no one wants to become a refugee, but each and every one of us can become one. We need to understand that it's not far away from our societies. I mean, I'm sure you have friends in Ukraine. If you would have asked them just a few years ago, I have a lot of friends in Ukraine. We studied together in Pennsylvania. If we would have asked them a few years ago, probably they wouldn't think that war was so close, that they would have to leave their homes, that their loved ones would be killed, that they would lose children, that they would have women raped by the Russian army. So we need to understand the fragility of peace and security and make sure we maintain it, we defend it, but at the same time, to be able to be strong enough to fight against those that are trying to put not just our lives, but our very existence, the existence of our countries at risk. I mean, 9/11 was an example of that. I mean, when we first saw 9/11 on TV, everyone in Kosovo thought that it was a movie. We never thought that such a risk would be posed to the United States of America, the defender of the free world. So I think it's examples like that we need to showcase to the young generation, so that we understand, one, how cherished peace is, that we should never take our freedom for granted, but at the same time that we need to prepare every single day to defend it from the crazy dictators around the world. There are unfortunately too many of these dictators, and they work very well hand in hand, because they don't care about principles. They don't care about rules and procedures like you guys do. They don't care about discipline. They care about their interest alone. They don't even care about their own people. Whereas for us, democracies, there are rules, there are procedures, there's discipline, and of course we follow them. So we need to work more hand in hand and be more united to be able to tackle the risks that are coming from these dictatorships. I know it's harder to keep the interest of the younger generation alive, but that simply means that we have to try harder. I mean, my mom and dad didn't have to teach me that there are security risks, because I could see them every day with my own eyes. I mean, I was 7 years old when I was hit by a Serbian police officer just because I was holding a book in my own language. because according to him, I did not have the right to have a book in my own language. So unfortunately, we, the children of Kosovo, we learned it the hard way. No one had, it was our everyday life to understand the value of freedom and independence. But for our children, it means that we have to talk to them every single day. They need to understand how lucky they are to be free, to live in peace, but at the same time, be brave enough and resilient enough to build our own defense, so that if someone thinks of putting our lives, putting our freedom and independence at risk, we would be able to not just defend ourselves, but also win. And in order to win, we need to hold on to one another. I think our power truly lies in our partnerships and in our alliances, which are, again, based on the values that we share. It is because of that that Ukraine is not alone today. It is because of that that Kosovo was not alone in 1999. And I think, one, we have to teach the young generations about as I said, about the importance of maintaining peace and freedom, but at the same time, we have to teach them about the importance of keeping alliances strong.
Ma'am, thank you very much. And I think with that we're right on time. So please join me in an awesome round of applause for